So guys, I had a bit of a health scare recently. At my last doctor's visit, my blood pressure was so high that the nurse was all like, I'm gonna go get the doctor and be right back. Don't move, which is always what you wanna hear in that scenario. I forget my exact reading, but it was something like, oh my God, over, you're going to die. And before you start thinking that I passed away on that day and that every video since then has been hosted by an AI version of my digitized consciousness owned by a private corporation, let me explain what happened. Now, the morning of that appointment, I got a call from the doctor asking where I was because I had completely forgotten about my appointment. Now, I told the nurse I was talking to that I was on my way. I wasn't. And that I'd be there in 5 minutes. I wouldn't, and I ran down to my car. I proceeded to drive as fast as I could within reason. I pulled into the parking lot like I was delivering a much needed organ transplant, and I sprinted into the office. Moments after I arrived, I was sitting in the weird padded chair getting my blood pressure read. Now, it turns out the stress of rushing to the doctor's office had such a drastic effect on my physical health that for a few minutes, I had the blood pressure of an old man mid-heart attack. Even if you do a better job than me of keeping track of your doctor's appointments, I imagine that parts of the situation are relatable. Because whether you're worried about your college workload, overwhelmed by a demanding boss, anxious about corporate layoffs, or just constantly overthinking the increasingly confusing state of the world, stress has become ubiquitous.
I'm sorry. I guess I'm stressed.
So we might ask, who's to blame? Is comparing ourselves to everyone on social media stressing us out? Is inflation the problem? What about social inequality? Or are our current stress levels just a part of what it means to be a human today? Well, let's start with a simple question. What is stress? Well, it's that shot of adrenaline you feel when you hear a Slack notification. It's your inability to focus on what your partner is saying because you're dreading a meeting with your boss. It's that acid reflux thing that Higgins has whenever he feels morally conflicted. It's a physiological phenomenon caused by external stressors, like work, financial problems, or trying to keep your dog from eating batteries.
She just keeps eating batteries. She says she's not eating them, then we go to the doctor, and the doctor says, yeah, we found a battery in there.
Or internal stressors, like body image, identity, or worrying about the 2024 reboot election. Now, any threat to your well-being can trigger a neurological and physiological stress response in your body that prepares you to fight, flight, or freeze. What would the fourth F be if there was a fourth one? Let me know. Now, it's an evolutionarily adaptive response that helps us cope with danger. Let's say, for example, you're being chased by a lion, and when you hear that roar from behind, your body releases epinephrine to push blood to the muscles, glucocorticoids to help with endurance, and endorphins to make you forget how horrible it all feels. Now, as your body channels all its energy into running, it temporarily slows down your digestion, growth, tissue repair, reproductive functioning, etc. Because you got to shut down reproductive functioning, because imagine if you were running from the lion and someone was like, hey, sailor. Long story short, your entire body and mind change on a biological and chemical level in response.
If you deal with a lot of stress every day for months or years on end, then stress doesn't just feel awful, it actually causes you physical harm.
In many cases, this is of course a good thing, right? Our bodies are ancient machines designed to keep us from becoming all-you-can-eat buffets for predators. But these days, most of us aren't running from lions. Today, our predators might be an annoying coworker. And when you report them to your boss, it doesn't really give your body the same endorphin rush as escaping a lion.
Could you turn that down just a little bit?
Well, I was told that I could listen to the radio at a reasonable volume from 9 to 11.
Yeah, no, I know you're allowed to.
Also, don't snitch. Find another way to handle it, but don't snitch. Researcher Emily Nagoski explains this phenomenon by suggesting that just because you've addressed the stressor doesn't mean you've dealt with the stress itself. Complaining about some jerk that you don't like doesn't have the same bodily cues as escaping certain death. So your body doesn't know that it can relax and complete its stress cycle. And because friggin' Kevin is still just gonna talk over you in meetings tomorrow, you remain trapped in the middle of a stress response day after day. This accumulated stress leads to a whole host of chronic illnesses. In the cardiovascular system, chronic activated stress response means a chronically high blood pressure, which weakens your veins and leads to an increased risk of heart disease. Multiply that scenario times, every organ system in your body, and you've gotten a minefield of stress-related illnesses. Because believe it or not, we're not meant to be stressed out all the time. When our ancestors weren't running from predators, they were probably just gathering berries, doing cave drawings, things of that nature. But today, it can feel like, a proverbial predator is always tracking us. And the stress response system that initially evolved to save us, well, it's now slowly killing us. And it seems like no amount of medicine or therapy or Zumba classes can get rid of it. Now, after the break, I'm going to explain why stress is such a formidable foe. But before that, I wanted to tell you something that's not stressful, which is, hey, we have a Patreon community. There's a link in the description, and we would love for you to join. Now, joining our Patreon is the best way for you to support us directly, to help keep us afloat in this very scary and stressful digital media world. When you join, you get stuff. You'll get our videos early with no ads, access to our Discord server. We have a couple of exclusive podcasts, some exclusive video series, like one called, Don't Put That in the Video, where our producer Olivia finds her favorite clips of things that I said on camera that I probably shouldn't have, but you still get to see them. Please don't share them and ruin my life. Let me know in the comments what 2 things are that shareholders do get hard for. And alt on that joke. Let me know in the comments what are 2 things that you get hard for. Another one that's insane. Let me know in the comments 2 things that your dad gets hard for. There's also a level where you get to spend more time with me learning about philosophy and things of that nature. And if you just want to throw $1 in the tip jar, we have a level for that too. So please click the link in the description. If you have it in you, it means a lot to us. Check out our Patreon. And before you do, let's all take one deep breath together, because the rest of this video is going to get way more stressful. Now, to understand why it feels like we all have high blood pressure these days, let's trace the trajectory of stress over the last century. Now, in the 1920s, Hans Selye reappropriated the concept of stress from physics to describe a non-specific strain acting on the human body. But it took World War II soldiers suffering from battle fatigue, combat exhaustion, and PTSD to make stress mainstream. As Robert Kugelman said, before the war, no one spoke of stress. After it, increasingly, everyone did. In the mid-1950s, American cardiologists Meyer Friedman and Ray Rosenman argued that people who lived especially stressful lives were prone to disease, particularly heart attacks. But these 2 cardiologists didn't conduct this study out of the goodness of their hearts. They were funded by the tobacco industry, which was eager to blame individual stress rather than cigarette smoking for heart disease and heart attacks. And this kicked off the field of health psychology, which studies how behavior impacts longevity. So thanks, Big Tobacco, for giving us that field of study and helping us all. That was a good one, guys. Now, the late 1950s also marked the beginning of modern wellness culture, popularized by Dr. Halbert L. Dunn. This is when our perception of good health and feeling well shifted from a state of being, or the opposite of illness, to an ongoing pursuit, or a state of constant doing. Now, good health is somewhat objective, right? It's determined through the quantitative methods of modern medicine, like measuring your blood pressure and hormonal levels. Wellness is more fuzzy, based on the perception of the individual, and whether it involves an unholy amount of rose quartz crystals is entirely up to you. For me, I feel most well when I'm texting and driving with sunglasses on at night after I take a bunch of Tylenol PM. I don't do that. No one should do that, and that I'm joking as well. I don't know, it probably would feel pretty chill though once that 5th Tylenol PM hits the dome. Oh, your boy is zonked. Today, wellness culture's choose your own adventure approach empowers us all to take the fight against stress into our own hands. That might mean buying a stress relief body spray, or stress balls filled with therapy gel, or anti-stress gummies, or calm down biofrequency stress relief patches, or you can get a bundle of stress reduction supplements, or how about a Calm Me Go breathing device to stem anxiety attacks, or a meditation headband that gives you real-time audio feedback based on your brain activity to calculate whether that deep breathing actually calmed your stress levels. I think right there we just got to about $848 for the privilege of not having your heart just beat out of your chest. There's also more than 1,000 stress management and psychosocial wellness apps to help you monitor and reduce your worries. And if you need more personal attention, you can hire one of the growing hordes of stress management coaches or take an 8-week stress level protocol program. The options, my friends, are truly limitless. Now, to be clear, for my part, I regularly drink stress relief tea. I do breathing exercises, and I've even used apps to try and de-stress my chaotic brain. Hey, can we turn the lights off in here just for a second so I can? Great. Because I have this oil diffuser, and I think there we go. If I could just use a little bit of this right now. There you go. It's okay, buddy. It's so relaxing. This is so relaxing. Okay, now I'm ready to finish the video. Great. And turn the lights back on. Turn the lights back on. Jesus Christ. We gotta stop getting unpaid interns. But it honestly doesn't always feel like it's working. Like most Americans, I'm not really relaxing as much as I would like to. 55% of Americans are stressed during the day, compared to a global average of 35%. And 94% of American workers report feeling chronic workplace stress. To do an unscientific study, let us know in the comments what country you're from and if you feel stressed or not. And we'll use that to learn about each other. So why does it feel like all the supplements and apps and everything else that we faithfully invest in are ultimately as useful against stress as a snorkel on the Titanic? Now, I'm going to tell you in a second, but first, I want to tell you about a very non-stressful place that you could go. A magical land called Wisecrack Live. It's our streaming show. We do it every Wednesday on the channel at 10 a.m. Pacific. It's a really fun time. I'm there. Producer Henry is there. We often have very cool guests, writers, comedians, people in entertainment, academics, folks who I think you'd like to hear from. And we have a really nice chat, a really good community feel to it. So I think if you need to de-stress, steal some time from your boss during the workday, and come hang out with your internet friends, join us on Wisecrack Live. You can set an alert on our channel so it'll let you know when we're going live. So go click those buttons and I'll see you there. And I promise it will not raise your blood pressure at all. So if all the stress balls and adaptogenic elixirs in the world aren't really making a meaningful dent in our stress levels, well, we gotta ask, is somebody benefiting from our perpetual state of stress? Well, according to one interpretation of a popular 1908 study by psychologists Robert Yerkes and John Dillingham Dodson, yes. In a series of sadistic animal behavioral experiments, and this is sad, trigger warning if you're a cat person, which included electrocuting kittens to see if they learned faster, these sick freaks, Yerkes and Dodson, found that as physiological or mental arousal increases, so does performance up to an optimal point, after which arousal starts having a negative effect. This is reinterpreted to a blanket some stress equals good mindset. The Yerkes-Dodson law has regularly appeared in organizational management textbooks over the years to encourage managers to push employees out of their comfort zone for maximum performance. Or as one academic text puts it, to teach that employees should be tuned like violins to have the optimum, not the minimum, amount of stress. But even for managers not explicitly trying to stress out their employees, developments over the past half century have yielded workplace organizational strategies that inevitably have that result. Now consider the rise of lean production practices in factories, with features like regular speed-ups, a bare-bones workforce, increased worker responsibility, increased surveillance over workers, and operating on a just-in-time basis. These developments led two auto union leaders, Mike Parker and Jane Slaughter, to rename lean production to a more damning management by stress. Also, Jane Slaughter, what a friggin' name. What if Slaughter decided not to go into auto union organizing and became a surgeon, and you were getting a really important surgery, and someone came in and said, okay, this is Surgeon Slaughter is gonna see you today. That would be a horrible vibe right as the gas hit and you started to fade off. You're like, what was her name? They described how managers deliberately sped up factories, stressing the mechanics and workers until there was an inevitable breakdown. Parker and Slaughter write, once the problems have been corrected, the system can then be further stressed. perhaps by reducing the number of workers. And to this day, the awesome power of stress is reiterated by business bloggers, health and fitness gurus, and so on. I've always thought, like, business bloggers, real business boys don't blog, you know? They just make money. You know, I don't trust anyone who's out here blogging. Thinker Mark Manson said in a podcast,
I'm like, no, you're supposed to be stressed. Like, the only thing that is keeping you working 14 hours is stress. Stress is not always a bad thing.
In The Guardian, one professor recalls being told the same thing by his manager, who yelled, "You're supposed to be stressed. Professors here are supposed to be stressed. That's the job." It was. I found it stressful when I was a professor, so I get that. And even if you know that stress helped force you to finish your grad thesis in time, sustaining that level of stress over your professional life will also turn your arteries into baked ziti. I don't know if anyone else had this experience, but I was up through grad school with someone who would only finish work if I just stayed up all night. I would wait till the last minute, and I remember in grad school I'd always blast, I think it was the second Rick Ross album, just on repeat, and stay up all night and finish all my work and then crash. And I hit a point in my mid-20s where I just couldn't do it anymore. My body was just like, so running on stress, not the best. If you're still young and doing that, I get it. Let's try to find a better way. Now, to justify a system where stress is the grease that keeps things moving, we're told the problem isn't the stress itself. Rather, it's how we manage our physiological and psychological responses to it. Now, in the face of ongoing threats like layoffs, corporate pressure, economic anxiety, things of that nature, our bosses now offer us wellness or mindfulness programs to counter our rising stress. It's like, yeah, because then I could use my work hours to do a weird online wellness program where I'm still working and I'm staring at the screen. It's just like, give me an hour to take a walk, you know? That should be a thing. Walk hours. Every day at a job, you should get an outside hour, like outdoor time, like prison. We should get outdoor time, like how they do at prison. By both co-opting spiritual language and creating an individual imperative to combat your own stress, scholar Mary V. Redden argues corporations are able to exploit and expand the inauthentic agency of workers, reassuring workers that they are both the origin and solution to all of their problems, despite having no real power within the institution. That's why scholar Martin Corbett, among others, describes corporate wellness as a sham that distracts us from all the ways work is becoming more stressful. At the same time, union power to fight those conditions remains low. You know, because unionizing your workforce to fight stressful conditions is really hard. Logging 10 minutes of nightly meditation, less hard. In this way, the modern workplace is designed to keep us in a constant state of optimal stress, while offering piecemeal solutions when that stress goes too far. Meanwhile, multiple industries profit from the system. Kugelman says stress keeps consultants busy, researchers productive, exercise instructors jumping, and ordinary citizens experimenting with an increasingly complex array of diets, lifestyles, and technological stress-reducing gadgets. It's easier to spend money on the promise of feeling centered than to imagine changing a society that makes us feel nuts. But this paradigm implies that we actually have power over our stress levels. For physician and author Gabor Mate, who has written extensively on the relationship between stress, physical health, and capitalism, such an approach ignores a myriad of factors that are completely outside of our control.
Now, who's got the pathology here? Society or the individual? Can we even make a separation between the two? We know that if you look at the markers of aging, various biological markers of aging, they're much more advanced in black people of the same age as their Caucasian cohorts, simply because of racism, because social stress and trauma translate into the physiology of the individual. You can't separate the mind from the body, and you cannot separate the individual from the environment.
Of course, dismantling long-standing systems of oppression isn't a simple, quick, or easy proposition. That's why, according to writer and theorist Mark Fisher, treating stress as an individual problem is ultra effective at keeping us from questioning existing systems. Now, he writes that the privatization of stress is a perfect capture system, elegant in its brutal efficiency. Capital makes the worker ill, and then multinational pharmaceutical companies sell them drugs to make them better. The social and political causation of distress is neatly sidestepped at the same time as discontent is individualized and interiorized. Though there is a large body of work that shows the links between individual happiness and political participation and extensive social ties, a public response to private distress is rarely considered as a first option. It is clearly easier to prescribe a drug than a wholesale change in the way society is organized. So the stress produced by our efficiency-dominated culture leads to the overuse and overprescribing of drugs, which help us maintain that productivity and efficiency. And to be clear, like, depression and anxiety are very real conditions. But Fisher points out the way in which blaming chronic stress on individual mental health conditions enables us to ignore the social and economic conditions contributing to our suffering. Fisher notes that this reflects broader realities about how we live and interact with our communities, or lack thereof. He argues that the stress epidemic is reflective of the way that public spaces have vanished over recent decades, writing that the privatization of stress has been part of a project that is aimed at an almost total destruction of the concept of the public, the very thing upon which psychic well-being fundamentally depends. What we urgently need is a new politics of mental health organized around the problem of public space. Basically, public spaces imply the existence of some type of interconnected community that shares cultural, economic, and physical space. But those values are in direct opposition to the privatization and individualization that we see across society. The disappearance of public spaces where folks can gather, connect, and heal both reflects and reinforces the understanding of stress and adjacent conditions as a matter of personal wellness and not of societal health and well-being. Because, you know, better for you to just take your pills on the couch, lying under your gravity blanket after a stressful day at the office, than to meet up with other humans and create shared spaces where humans can get together and, you know, have the potential to resist. And while we might not feel like we have the individual capacity to undermine the logic of capitalism, we might be able to shift our thinking so that we see stress as a communal problem. In doing so, we can focus on reinvigorating our decaying public spaces and creating the conditions for ourselves and others to combat stress as communities. Because combating stress as individual workers logging hours in office wellness programs, or as consumers throwing our hard-earned bucks at supplements and gadgets, well, it just isn't doing the trick. And it's not our fault. Our stress is seen as beneficial to the system. And even if a stressed out workforce isn't necessarily more productive, it's inevitably more compliant. You know, we shouldn't have to be pushed to our limits like factory equipment to see when we break, especially when honestly most of us could just use an actual break instead. But please let me know what you all think, right? Is stress impossible to escape under current working conditions? Do you think that, you know, there's ways we can individually start to turn things around? I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comments. A huge thanks, by the way, for just being here, for watching the video. Thank you so much to those of you who like and subscribe and comment. It really does help us out a whole lot, so thank you for doing it. And if you have it in you, maybe consider sharing one of our videos. That helps us too. Maybe send it to your boss. Send this video to your boss, kind of passive aggressively. And, you know, like I said before, we have a Patreon. It helps us out a ton if you can join it. There's a link in the description. But, you know, even if you can't, I still love you. And what I hope for all of you right now is you find some time in the coming week to de-stress just a little bit. In the meantime, I'll catch you back here later.